Welcome to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, September the 1st. I'd like to thank again our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff. Our guest in this segment is Wener Simbeck. Wener, thanks for coming on. We're going to be talking about climate change. I think we can certainly say that things are getting crazier in terms of the weather. The forest fires are everywhere. I was in Vancouver this past weekend. And just on the periphery, I mean, I was lucky where I was. We didn't lose power. A huge amount of rain, a lot of wind, following months of drought. And I noticed the media in Vancouver, the big media, was blaming, they weren't saying, folks, we have to drive less or we're all going to be dead because of climate change. They were focusing a lot of public anger at BC Hydro because their website was down.
Right,
So
they couldn't get through to 911.
Yeah, and they couldn't get through to 911.
That's right.
And those are problems for people. But they never mentioned once, like, we have to change what we're doing or we're going to kill ourselves.
Well, the mayor was briefly interviewed. I did see a quick a news clip of him, the mayor of Vancouver, and he did mention that this is going to be the future. We're going to see more severe weather events. So he was able to sort of add that to the mix, but of course he gets drowned out by all these other reports and all these other messages of citizens complaining about BC Hydro not responding quickly
Well, it
enough.
wasn't really the citizens complaining. I didn't hear that. It was the media saying that people were complaining about this. I only heard one citizen, and she was quite reasonable.
Okay, well, I did see, sorry, not to disagree, but I did see one older gentleman who couldn't get into his house because a tree was hovering over it, you know, suspended by power lines, and they couldn't get enough people there to turn the power off and then get the tree service to cut the trees down. And then anyway, so the fire department just basically said you can't go in your house. He was upset about that. Understandable. There were a lot of people that were upset.
Oh, of course.
And scared, and you know, you totally understand.
And this is the new normal.
And that's what the mayor of Vancouver was saying, and I totally agree with him. This is something that we're going to see more of, unfortunately. We're going to see more extreme weather events, things that are just unusual. You'll either see unusually heavy rains, unusual droughts, unusual windstorms. That's going to be the new normal. You know, so we're going to see unusual events all the time moving forward, and it's never going to become really the way it was. And that's, if you believe the scientists who sort of study this, they've been predicting this since the 80s, really.
Well, you know, we've got a few things to talk about, but maybe we should get to the most important thing, which is, what do we do now?
What do we do now? Well, in Canada in particular, we have a federal election going on. So I think it's really important to get people that you may know have never voted or haven't voted in the last federal election, or who are just totally turned off politics, trying to engage them, trying to discuss with them some of the important issues like climate change, because that's really going to be important for the future generation. So if anyone who has children, you know, who hasn't been bothering to vote, they should really start to pay attention to what the candidates are saying. I mean, the previous guest you just had on was endorsing Elizabeth May, somebody I would endorse as well, but that's not the only one that's out there. And Elizabeth May with the Green Party is not going to win the federal election, unfortunately. So we have to look at the other candidates. And really what the biggest concern is of the federal election coming up is that we have a strong three-leader race, really. We have the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. And because we have a three-horse race, if you want to call it that, chances are the Conservatives could become a minority government again. Even worst case could be another majority. It's unlikely, but a minority is possible. And I think really we want to avoid that at all costs. You know, a minority Liberal or NDP would be okay with me any day.
So in terms of just climate change, you're happy with minority Liberal, minority NDP,
Yes.
Majority Liberal?
Well, even that would be okay.
Majority NDP?
Well, I would, you know, again, personal preferences. I think the Harper government and the Conservatives themselves, they just, you know, they kind of like made a contract with the devil, which is the oil industry, you know, and because they relied on a lot of funding that came from that sector, and assuming that sector is going to drive the Canadian economy forward, they basically put all their eggs in that one basket. Now, recently, that kind of has fallen through because the oil price has gone down toilet. You know, down to $40 a barrel. That hasn't been good for the Alberta economy. And if you saw that news clips yesterday from the finance minister of Alberta, which is now NDP, I mean, he clearly pointed out, we're in the hole. We're $6 billion in the hole. And, that was cut out of the mainstream media, actually, because I happened to listen to it on CBC radio. They actually played him discussing why it is that they're in the hole. They cut that out in the actual on CBC The National.
Yeah.
Well, they explained clearly that we had in Alberta we had conservative governments over many years now, and they just have mismanaged the oil sector. They have
that's
not
a polite way of putting it. Mismanaged.
Well, yeah, they're directly.
This was a massive giveaway and poisoning.
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
Alberta.
So basically, I think they estimate. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it is understandable that billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, have been wasted, not collected, being given to the industry by really low royalties in form of really low royalties. So they never could really save any money for a rainy day like what we have right now. So, and the thing, this is I already suspected, once the world will realize that we can't burn all the oil that's in the ground, which is what the scientists have been saying, that means the oil in the tar sands will not become mineable. It will be financially impossible.
Thank goodness for that.
And who's going to clean it up? Who is going to clean up this
Nobody.
mess?
It's impossible to clean up.
And that's why I'm saying the governments have totally failed, because there should have been a fund put aside for exactly this purpose, to clean it up.
But no matter how much money you put aside, you can't clean it up. I mean, it's poisoned for...
I suppose forever, right?
Yeah.
For a long time anyways. And that's the thing. I mean, we have basically, it flows into the Athabasca River flows into the Mackenzie watershed. And I think I have that right. But it's one of the biggest freshwater watersheds in the world that we have polluted.
Poisoned. And then into the ocean and then around
into the Alaska Ocean. Yeah.
And I guess we've got to move to renewables. We've certainly got to consume less and do less.
Absolutely.
We've got to move away from the cars. To me, the car is the number one disaster. I can't think of a bigger disaster environmentally than the car.
Well, obviously, things have to, when it comes to transportation, there has to be a lot more that we need to do in order to allow public transit to flourish. And the way you do this, you tax heavily on gasoline or oil, right, to pay for that, to pay for the infrastructure that we need. We basically gave away the oil and the natural resources of Canada. We should have charged higher royalties, which we didn't do. So we mismanaged that already. So like the horse is already out of the barn, now it's going to become more painful to basically collect all those revenues in form of higher taxation. That's the only way to get that money. And of course, to shift the economy
but we can higher tax the corporations. They've got so much money that there's lots of money to pay for what we have to do. We just have to take it from the people who have stolen it from us.
That's right. So, but this is going to become a bit of a battle, as you can imagine, right? Because, all the big banks have profited really well. They have money they should be giving back to the economy, right, in terms of forms of higher taxation. There need to be stricter rules of how many fees they can charge us, the customer, right? Because otherwise they would just pass it on to us.
Few of them should probably be up on charges.
I suppose so. But anyway, so there needs to be a big shift. The economy needs to shift from the status quo of what we've had, which hasn't been working. We've produced a lot of greenhouse gas emissions as a result. We need to shift to green renewables industries. So solar, photovoltaic, geothermal, wind energy. There was just a headline, I just caught it just before I came here. Copenhagen again was in the news. Not Copenhagen, sorry, Denmark. Denmark was in the news. They've invested a lot of money into renewables, particularly wind farms. And they produced 140% again of their energy needs, so 40% surplus. So they're able to sell that surplus to their neighboring countries. They're able to produce more energy in form of renewables than they actually need. Right? And it's a little small country. I think Canada can easily do that too, if we're clever about it, right? If we invest in the right infrastructure projects.
But somehow, if we don't reduce, everybody, including Denmark, reduce the use of the car and many other things as well.
And many other things. The airplane would be another one, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, living simpler doesn't mean you live less happy.
No, I think it means you live more happy.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
We need to actually attach happiness as part of an economic gauge.
Yeah.
We measure GDP, gross national product, in forms of dollars, but happiness doesn't get measured. And that should really be quality of life. So that's where transit would come in. People less spending time in their cars and spending more time in public transit would alleviate stress, and they become happier.
Yeah. And then if you're talking public transit, it's got to be safe, comfortable, quiet, pleasant, convenient.
All you have to do is look to Europe.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look to Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, they have beautiful examples of how it works.
Yeah. And of course that means a better society in general.
Yes.
And that's really what it's all about. So what you're talking about, what we're talking about, isn't going to cost us.
It's a shift.
It's going to benefit us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what Stéphane Dion said years
Wanted
ago.
to do.
A green shift.
Yeah, I was a big
and
fan
look how
of
they
his.
destroyed him. I was a fan too.
Yeah. It was really sad to see how they destroyed that message, and it was never clearly explained, in the media. So the media has
it
a
was
big,
clearly explained. The media did not. They were out to get Stéphane Dion, and they got him. And we lost. We Canadians lost.
Yeah.
A lot of us fell for it.
Yeah.
And but it was all a story, a corporate story, because he was talking about many of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so I hope people will go out and vote, organize, help, whoever party you support. But obviously, there's a lot of good ideas out there. Let's just get active, get involved, get educated, and get out to vote. That's the most important thing.
Werner, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens.